an hour and a half. We'll first, I'll just do a quick intro of NSR Cell, maybe 5 minutes long in total. Just walk through of, NSR Cell's history. Then we'll just talk about the impact of the program, hand it over to Nat. And then we can do about a 45-minute to 1 hour, session or knowledge sharing session, followed by about maybe 15-20 minutes of Q&A. That's, I think, our schedule for the next hour and a half. I hope that works for everyone. Awesome. Okay. To everyone who's joined the meeting today, thank you so much for joining us. Welcome to this webinar. We'll just be walking you through, what we do here at NSR Cell. To begin with, I'm Samhita. I'm a part of the marketing team here at NSR Cell. Today, I'm joined by Krishna, Nat, and Shruti, and also my colleague Chitwan. We'll just briefly walk you through, what we do here. So NSR Cell has been around for close to 23 years now, a little over 2 decades. We were first started in the year 99, early 2000 actually, and we were set up as the Entrepreneurship and Innovation Center at IIM Bangalore. The name itself will tell you a lot about who started and whose a vision sort of brought about NSR Cell. NSR Cell stands for Narutur Srinivas Raghavan Center for Entrepreneurial Learning, so Mr. NSR. He was one of the 6 co-founders of Infosys, and he set up NSR Cell back in the year 2000 with a grant because he saw a vision. He had a vision for the Indian startup ecosystem, and he felt there was a need for incubators, really people who could guide startups. And he set up NSR Cell at IIM Bangalore. Our mission is to catalyze the entrepreneurship ecosystem because we exist in such a unique space wherein we have access to academia as well as the industry professionals. We're really able to sort of bridge that gap and really bring together, entrepreneurs, academia, and the industry. And our vision is to foster fundamental research and entrepreneurship. Today, we run about 14 programs in a calendar year, anywhere from, in the spaces of women entrepreneurship to social impact to focused cohorts for consumer brands, for fintech, for healthcare, and so on. I'm handing it over to my colleague Chitwan to tell you a little bit about the Impact Orbit program. On to you, Chitwan.
Thank you so much for that, Sam. So hi everybody, again, thank you for joining. So currently the applications for our Tech-Enabled Social Enterprises program is open. Just to tell you who the program would be a great fit for. So any startup working in the area of early revenue to growth stage, these are all impact first ventures. So they can be both for-profit as well as not-for-profit organization. The one criteria that we do have is they have to be digitally inclusive innovation. So here, when we talk about digital technology, technology is not a service, doesn't have to be a product, but just has to be an enabler, right? And it is also sector agnostic. So some of the highlights from the program that you can expect are clarity in value propositions. There's also a grant component of up to 15 lakhs for selected ventures. For some select ventures, we are very focused on working on impact metric readiness as well as strategy and product road mapping. A bit more about the program, we're looking at incubating about 120 startups in the coming 3 years. The current application is live. The last date for completing the application is 30th of September. I hope some of you find this relevant and do apply. We look forward to seeing you. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you, Chitwan.
Over to you, Sam.
Thank you. Okay, on to today's session on leadership and resilience. We're joined by Nat, Shruti, and Krishna. I will go ahead and introduce Nat. I will introduce Nat to everyone here, and then I'll hand over the session. So Nat is a mentor at NSR Cell. He was also the ex-director of programs and investments with the Michael and Susan Dell Foundation, wherein he was managing a portfolio of equity, debt, blended finance, grants, and seed funds. He also advised several NBFCs on product strategy, credit underwriting, operations, technology, and analytics. Nat was also the CEO of eGovernment's Foundation, providing smart city platforms to cities and corporations in India, in total impacting about 2 crore citizens or 20 million citizens. Thank you so much, Nat, for agreeing to do this today, and over to you.
Great, thank you. Thank you so much. First of all, to NSR Cell for putting this session together. And welcome everybody. Good afternoon or early good evening. So as as we think about this topic, it's an extremely critical topic in the times that we live in, and more so in the last 3 years or so for obvious reasons. And I think we will focus a lot more on the adaptation and the resilience component of leadership. And we have with us Shruti and Krishna, who will share their own perspectives and experiences. So in terms of logistics, we'll plan to have this discussion for about 45 minutes and then open it for a interactive session. But if you have questions along the way, do type them in the chat box. And if we need to stop and take those questions, we will. I'll also start with one small caveat before we get on to the session. These are shared learnings and experiences that we will talk about, right? This topic is so broad and deep. None of it is dishing out a prescription for you to follow directly, right? This is something of a framework, and there is a lot of personality involved in it in terms of this personal situation for yourself and who you are, your own ambience and ecosystem, and how you work with it. So I think what I at least intend is to for each of us to share some of those experiences and what worked. And I almost think of this as slicing a sphere or a fruit and getting a cross-sectional view of it. A lot of it would be relevant, but you still need to apply it in your own situation. So that's a caveat that I would want to start off with. So I will think about resilience in a couple of ways, right? One is it is a personality trait, right? It's a life skill almost, right? And we will talk about what that means, and we'll hear from the experts as well. And how do you identify somebody going through a stressful situation or the need for resilience? What are the different aspects of it as you begin experiencing setback, if you will, and how do you bounce off it, right? So that's something to think about. And the second aspect of it is how is it particularly applicable for an entrepreneur in general, or like they say, it's lonely at the top phenomenon, right? So as a social entrepreneur, even so. So what do you do to cope with that, and what are the different coping mechanisms available is something we would want to chat about. And again, if you have questions, would love to address them at the end of it. And finally, what should the organizations do to be resilient, right? It's not just about people and personalities. Organizations have its own personality, which is a collective of all the people in it. And again, as a leader who sets a tone, how do you think about the resiliency of the organization, people in it, including your product? How do you react in light of competition in terms of what the market is doing, what the customers want? How do you think about resiliency in an organization is something that we want to uncover as well. So these would be the key facets of what we would want to discuss. And there'll be along the way discussions about talent and nurturing, all of this towards resilient leadership as a core theme. So I'm going to, with that context, I would want to invite Shruti to introduce herself, and then Krishna briefly a personal introduction, and then we'll come back to the topic and go from there. Shruti, please go ahead.
Thank you, Nat, and good afternoon to everyone. You're almost at the cusp of afternoon and evening, that just like Nat sort of highlighted. But yeah, welcome, and thank you for the opportunity. I think this is such an important topic, and the one that we can never stop talking about, right? I think there's just so much to learn and share. A quick introduction. I am Shruti, and I lead the youth work for Ashoka in India. We are building a community of teen change makers and institutional partners to help society reimagine a world where every young person can grow practicing to be a change maker. Just a little bit on Ashoka. Ashoka is one of the largest networks of social entrepreneurs and change makers in the world. Our founder, Mr. Bill Drayton, actually coined the word social entrepreneurship and started the organization back in 1980 to support world's leading social entrepreneurs doing system-changing work. So in the last almost 40 years now, we have been able to select some of the most inspiring social entrepreneurs of the world, and have supported over 4,000 social entrepreneurs with the Ashoka Fellowship. I have been in the impact space for over 15 years now, and I've worked in the impact investing space with one of the largest impact investment fund in India. I worked in grant making and venture philanthropy, and I've helped various social enterprises and impact organizations measure and communicate their impact. I have a PhD in media studies, specializing in communication technology for development from Florida State, and I also have a master's in mass communication from Nanyang Technological University. After my initial part of my career as a journalist, which feels eons ago now. Yeah. So yeah, that's me. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Shruti. That is very impressive credentials. So I'm looking forward to hearing your perspectives as well. I mean, Ashoka is indeed a leader in terms of coining the word change maker. So there's be a lot of experience there for all of us to gain from. So thank you. And Krishna, over to you. Can you please introduce yourself for the audience?
Yeah. So after listening to you, that I don't know what to tell actually based on the profiles. Okay, but I'll do my best whatever I did. So I'm Krishna, and I'm the founder and CEO of Carry Now right now, and I did my started my career as an IT graduate, and then started three startups. Got great learnings, which where I got better. I mean, I understood the meaning of resilience. Actually, failed in those three startups, and then again went into corporates, and then headed strategic alliances with two startups, mid-level startups. One you might have heard about, Quick Ride, which is the largest carpooling platform, where I was heading strategic alliances. And then after that, in 2020, I lost my father due to COVID when he traveled from my village to the nearby town to buy the medicine. Near the medical shop, he got COVID, and then after that, he was no more. So by taking that particular situation, we have started this Carry Now, where we wanted to be the torch bearer to the rural world, where we deliver products and services to the rural India, rural families, as per their needs and aspirations. So our vision is to be expanding entire India and providing services to almost by 2033. 6 lakhs villages by 2033. So this is my thing, and then faced a lot of, that's what I was mentioning over the email, the real life situations. I was having a lot of things actually, but I would like to mention only a few of them while on the conversation.
Great. Thank you, Krishna. I mean, it is all about lived experiences. So really look forward to, bringing those experiences, and nothing like a, founder and a promoter who's got a passion and purpose. So I think we absolutely hope to learn a lot from those experiences today. So just to kick off in a probably slightly lighter vein, I thought I'll start with a story on, what resilience means to me as I think about it. And this was told to me long time back when I was starting my consulting career. And I'm sure many of you have heard it, but bear with me. And sometimes it sets a great context in terms of what it means. So this is, like any story goes, once upon a time, in a land far away, this is this arid lands of Kansas City, which is a Kansas State, which is a, predominantly farming community. So there lived a farmer, and he was a corn farmer, and he had a few donkeys that was assisting him with his farming activities to carry the loads and all of that. And one fine day, it was the peak of summer, and he had a well that was almost dry, going dry. And one of these slightly older donkeys kind of slipped on this loose mud and fell into the well, right? And kind of a decently deep well. And the farmer tried very hard to retrieve the donkey from the well. I mean, he was very connected to his animals, who was his co-laborers. He tried very hard. He got some help from neighbors. They tried everything, but for some reason it didn't work at all, right? And the donkey was crying and all that, and he could not tolerate that beyond a point. He said, "There is just no point, kind of tolerating the agony. So let's put an end to it." So he said, with a few of his neighbors, they started shoveling dirt and mud into it to kind of bury the donkey, to give it a quick death as opposed to suffering. And they did that of few shovels, and donkey was crying and crying loudly. And after a while, the crying stopped. So they said, "Okay, looks like it's done." They went and peeped into the thing, and they were seeing the donkey shake off the dirt and the mud, and they were going and settling in the ground, and the donkey was stepping on the dirt and coming up, right? So there was an interesting lesson, and I think you know how the story ended. So they kept shoveling the dirt and mud on the donkey, and the level raised, and the donkey stepped off the well and came back, right? So to me, that was a very interesting way to think about resilience, right? I mean, there are different ways to deal with it. Like I said, it's not a one size fits all, and you have your own situation and own way to dealing with it. But this kind of hit home hard for me. No matter what the world throws at you, as you think about, there are steps of dealing with it, recognizing it, but at the end, how do you take that and use it to your advantage to come out of it stronger, right? To me, that was a powerful lesson that was told to me a long time back, and I thought I'd open with that. But to me, if you were to ask me a definition, it is about how do you bounce or recover from a stressful situation or a change, an unseen one, if you will, that you didn't have control over. And that to me is the heart of how I would think about resilience, right? So I'm going to stop there, but I think we'll love to go around the room and have Shruti talk a little bit about how she thinks about resilience from her, vantage point in Ashoka meeting and making so many change makers in our experience. And then we'll go to Krishna after that, and we'll come back and do a bit of a round robin. So Shruti, what does resilience mean to you? How would you have people think about it or relate to it?
Thank you, Nat. Thank you for stories are so powerful. So thank you for opening with that. I think to me, resilience is almost a capability of a system or an individual to handle change, right, and continue to grow. And it's interesting how the term became very popular during the pandemic, right? And we all were talking about resilience after that. But I do feel that resilience is more common than we think. Right, we see them in little children who get up every time after they fall. We see them we saw them in each and every one of us when we dealt with loss and grief that came with pandemic and other trying times. So I think to me, resilience is like any skill. It's like playing a sport or an instrument. If we push past the initial discomfort and we continue to be at it over a period of time, we get more comfortable pushing past more difficult times, right? And you just keep building on that. I do feel that there are a few things that I've observed around me with social entrepreneurs and change makers who do work for communities. And I think it's extremely important to be self-aware, right? And I think oftentimes we're all victims of what is known as a spotlight effect, right? We often end up making the problem bigger than it is. And what I like to do, or what I've seen social entrepreneurs do as well, is state the facts, look at the problem for what it is, the problem itself, right? And take ownership of it without really blaming anyone for it, and get into the solution mode, which is more helpful than brooding over a problem. So to get into the solution, into a solution mindset. It also always helps to reframe and reinterpret the problem itself, right? In a very rational way. And it's extremely important then to not fall into any of the thinking traps, which are words like, this never will happen, it can't happen, it's always like this, it's us versus them. So, I think these are all traps that one has to avoid falling into. And I think lastly, and we'll come back to a more deeper conversation on resilience, but I think for me, making your own tribe, as the African proverb goes, right? If you want to go fast, you go alone, but if you want to go farther, you go together, right? So the one thing that I've realized over time is that you can't do it all alone. You need to have your village, you need to have a community, you need to have a tribe to support you, and it's very important for everyone, right, to be able to identify those sources of support in their professional, personal spaces and in the communities that they belong to. Yeah, so that's I think resilience for me, just to begin with.
Great, Shruti. Thank you so much. I mean, the key thing that stuck with me is the spotlight effect. I want to come back and go deeper into that, and making the problem bigger than actually is, right? These are people sometimes imagine problems, and these are things that we all have seen. So I would love to go deeper than that, and then the reframing as well, which is a very interesting tool in terms of how we think about a different vantage point. So I certainly will come back to you and would ask you for going deeper on those things. So Krishna, with that, how do you think about resilience, Krishna? I know you had personal experiences that you want to share. Please feel free to, and take us through what are those key learnings for you from that experience.
So in my view, actually, see, I'm just adding whatever you have told. Okay. So in my view, how soon do you bounce back from your setback? So as a social entrepreneur or normal entrepreneur, anybody, even in our personal life also, we face a lot of challenges actually. Every time we face challenges. So most of the times, as Ms. Sudhi mentioned, like we feel, I mean, any problem like much bigger problem than treating it like a small problem. So in my personal experience, like let's take it like when I lost my father. So I was into depression for 4 5 months almost. So instead of, I mean, I was not coming out of the situation completely. But one day I ordered something from Dunzo, whereas I'm getting everything in 10 minutes. And then I took that, and then, okay, why can't we provide similar kind of solution to the villagers also? Whereas where my father previously traveled to the town from my village. So why don't we create into a solution? Like most of the times we feel problems instead of treating them as challenge, if we treat it as an opportunity. So in fact, even if I feel much more worse also, I can't bring my dad back. But at least I can save a couple of more people, where I can provide convenience to the village people and I can empower and we can become torchbearers to the rural world. That's how we felt, and then we started carrying on. And another thing is like most of the times we feel, in my view, in my personal experience, I feel the problems are three types actually, challenges which we face most of the times as an entrepreneur. One is easily solvable. Second is you can take other support and then you can solve it. Third, you cannot solve irrespective whatever you do. The problem is problem. That's it. So don't attach to the problem too much and categorize the problem first. Identify the problem, which kind of problem it is, and then list out all the possibilities or solutions, whatever it is going to be there. Every time, whenever I get any challenge, this is what I do, and then list out possible solutions. Take out the list of network who can support you in those orientations. Don't ask everybody about every help. You should have a clarity whom to ask what kind of help, and then you challenge the challenge. That's what I feel. So it's challenge should be like should become like a friend. Like every time, whenever a lot of people pray God, like I don't give me challenge and all, right? But I pray God, give me more challenges, which is much bigger than previous, but give me capacity to handle it. That's how I feel. So this is what is my personal experience. And while building Carino also, I met with accident in December 28th, on December 28th last year, and I was on bed rest completely for 8 months. And the next day itself, I was on ICU. I got a call with NSR cell. I attended a call with NSR cell on the next day itself before the surgery happened. I think that's why they considered me as towards resilience and then kept me in the panel, I think. So that's what my learnings actually as of now. And there are more to share, but yeah, definitely.
That's a very powerful message, and I think makes me think about a term called fear. I mean, fear is very much part of resilience, and somebody had expanded this to say, it's almost false expectations about reality, right? In some sense, back to what Shruti also talked about. You imagine things that are much bigger, right, in your head than what really is, and as I think about it, there are different ways to slice and dice, back into the conversation. I go back to COVID days, as we were working with several disrupted communities, right? Particularly a lot of micro entrepreneurs and nano entrepreneurs. And I want to, step back a little bit. Also, I'm going to make some guesses about the audience. I'm assuming, a lot of them are entrepreneurs, social entrepreneurs. Some of them are very early, very young, maybe fresh off college, schools, and onto a bright and brilliant idea. I think by design, you have some, kind of a massive purpose in terms of what you want to do, and you are change makers, as Ashoka would call them, right? So I would think a lot of you will have a resilient muscle in your natural built up as you think about it. As I set up the next part of the conversation, it's almost a two-edged or two parts of the coin, if you will, right? I would want to address both of them. One is the society will thrust upon you massive burden, right? They'll make a hero and heroine out of you and say, you're solving the world's problems and you're a great leader, you're out to accomplish. And I feel one has to be careful about how you deal with it, right? And to truly believe that you are a hero and heroine, and you can't share your feelings and you can't expose your vulnerabilities to people, can lead you down a certain trap, right? And I think it's important to watch for that. And I'd love to hear how Shruti and Krishna think about that part of it. And the second part of it is, having a good mindset in terms of how you deal with it, right? I mean, there is again a a very good mentor early in the days for me who talked about it. So he told me, Nat, take your work quite seriously, but don't take yourself that seriously, right? So it is about be very aligned to what you're out to achieve, but then there is a lot of life outside of that as well. You do certainly need to give yourself time and space to pursue your hobbies, your relationships with the family, friends. That's what makes a much more complete and whole personality. And that is what will come in handy, as both Shruti and Krishna hinted, in terms of social connections, networks, all of that will come and help you deal with it. So I'm going to, with that thought, I'm going to go to Shruti. Maybe let's go a little deeper. Maybe, some experiences in terms of how should one think about the stress in life or stress in a company as a leader, and what are some of the telltale signs that they're going through it, and what might be a good ecosystem, to watch for that, and how they can leverage the ecosystem.
Thank you, Nat. I think it's extremely important what you bring up, right? Which is, do you sort of get stuck as an entrepreneur, as a leader, with the change and with the change that you are expected to bring now to communities, or do you explore how you can share those leadership opportunities with people around you, right? And in our work with social entrepreneurs, we have realized that social entrepreneurs impact society by creating social value for the greatest good of all, right? Now, what do I mean by that is, when we select social entrepreneurs as Ashoka Fellows, we realize that these are not just resilient individuals, but they're also people who are capable of building resilient ecosystems, right? And bring systems level change in the work that they're doing. Now, I think that's a very extremely important point, because when you are working with multiple stakeholders and you're working with communities and making them resilient, the impact that you're creating is much more long lasting. It's more sustainable, of the risk of using an overused term. I will still say that it's powerful change that you create in communities. And what you also do in the process is that you are inspiring other people to take ownership of that change. Right. So essentially what you are doing in the process is you are distributing the ability to bring change within a much wider community, which brings in a much larger change. We publish an annual report every year, where we spend a lot of time speaking to our social entrepreneurs. We call it the Unlonely Planet, right? And one of the observations that we have from that report is Ashoka Fellows, our social entrepreneurs, are extremely driven in building multiplier relationships to further support communities to lead, or even inspire different stakeholders to be able to lead change. So it's just tying that back to the point that I'm trying to reiterate, which is 85% of our fellows partnered with other community-led organizations, and over 75% collaborate with local government bodies to bring change in their communities. So, I think it's important to also, when we talk about resilience, shift ownership. And I don't mean shift ownership in a pushing the responsibility away kind of a way, but in terms of sharing responsibilities and sharing leadership opportunities with much diverse and much larger communities. Yeah.
Wonderful. In fact, that reminds me of, again, as we were thinking about supporting some of these micro entrepreneurs during COVID, and, we were thinking of different mechanisms like blended finance and, concessionary debt and different things, essentially to bring back the women entrepreneurs, because they all suffered. About 45% of them had to shut down. Obviously, lockdown was such a huge thing. And we had a small framework that we used we formed a consortium. Again, we had our own network as to how we should go and help them. And as we thought about MSMEs and nano entrepreneurs, we kind of had this 3 or 4 different segments we thought about. One is, there were very small businesses or extremely underprivileged economically, socially, who just could not deal with it, right? I mean, so they were giving up, right? So they had to rely on government stimulus and things like that. So that's one way to think about it. And some of what I'm saying will apply to us as personalities, individuals, and businesses. So one is giving up, and then the second segment, or people would be they'll put up with it. They'll put up with the stress that they face, and they'll deal with it, fight back, and get back to a certain level where they're up, but they still lost their self-esteem or confidence. They were the scars in their mind as to what hit them, and it still is a baggage for them to deal with, right? So it takes a bit longer for them to get past, but they're back doing certain things to make a survival. And then the last two things that are interesting ones, I mean, this is what to me defines resilience. And I would call them either bounce up or step up, right? I mean, that's a term that we use there. And this is about, it's almost like the donkey example in the farmer and the donkey story. They use this to really, build resilience and, have a very strong willpower to overcome obstacles. And along the way, they actually formed networks that they think was needed before. Now they really form new networks, which will then come in to make them much stronger than ever before. So it's almost using a certain setback to come back, not to the same level as before, but sometimes even stronger. So these are the third and fourth segments. And again, it's very, very important not to undermine the power of community, right? It's extremely important. I mean, you're blessed if you're a very strong individual with willpower, but it's very, very important to leverage the power of the community to make each other better. And it's a give and take. It's not just you are resilient because you're there and you're doing the same to them as well. In many ways, you're inspiring without meaning to inspire, just for them to have an opportunity to see you in action, to you to spring back and pursue your ideas. And that is a way to inspire several other people, and not to mention the very deliberate efforts that you will do later on as well. So and this went on. So we had to identify which are the ones that we could support with a little bit of a working capital and other things. And so we kind of saw some of those people who fell in the third and fourth bucket really big, come up, and over the next couple of years, they were doing much more business than ever before. So I think this, to me, the only thing I could identify this was resilience and how strong were they individually and the community as well. So, again, Krish, I would like to bring you in here. I know you had a, particularly, traumatic way in terms of how you started your entrepreneurship journey about, building this delivery of goods, much like your, medical medicine and all of that. So, take us briefly through it. As, how did, you recover from the trauma, and when did you accept the fact, and how did it then pivot into a business idea that you would take and, run with it?
Yeah, so thank you. So not actually, first of all, as you mentioned, like in the as part of the resilience, we have to accept what it is, situation, whatever it is there. So I have accepted after a couple of months of depression that whereas I cannot bring my father back, and then I ordered something from Dunzo. Within 10 minutes, they delivered it in Bangalore. I was working in Bangalore. Then I thought, ki boss, just it's a coconut water. Like coconut water itself, they can bring it in 10 minutes. In cities, you are getting everything at 10 minutes and 2 minutes also nowadays people are promising. Why can't we deliver at least in villages? They don't require 10 minutes delivery, 2 minutes delivery. All they just require is like a family member, like their son or daughter. If we can deliver anything from the nearby town to their village, especially medicines, grocery, and necessary items, that would create more value to them as like their son or daughter. So it's more than money what we create. Like a lot of companies are building outside in the cities. So that's what I felt. And then I quit my job and then started here, came to my native place, inquired about like we have done some small survey, and then got so many rejections like who will order, how many people are able to order through app and other things. Then that is another challenge actually which we faced. How many people will order through app? Net connectivity is low. Of course, thanks to Geo, it is little bit better than earlier, but still people face challenges through internet connectivity. That's where we find out why don't we start with toll-free number. So we told a lot of villages, you call to this number, whatever you want from the nearby town. Instead, you travel to the town, we get it to your doorstep. That's how we started. Then slowly people started asking about WhatsApp. Then slowly people started asking about app, mobile application. Like this, we have included. I mean, almost now we have created a rural entrepreneur also in each village, which we have experimented, which is creating financial inclusion also happening in that. So that's how we started, and we are right now doing it. And in my view, when it comes to resilience, we face a lot of failures. In fact, as an entrepreneur, especially social entrepreneurs, face a lot of failures within this thing actually. And in this case, I remember one just now also, and it's my all-time favorite video from Elon Musk. So whereas one of the interviews, the interviewer asked him like, "You have failed in 3 SpaceX attempts, and why don't you give up? You might have packed everything." Then he says like, "I'll never give up." And then he say one more word also. After that, 2 words he mentions, like either I would be dead or incapacitated. So this, I mean, so we should be like that actually. We should be completely attached to your mission actually, what you want to fulfill. Then all the challenges will disappear automatically. Like I don't say it will disappear, but you will find out the ways to solve those challenges. And we face a lot of rejections. Obviously, a lot of people. We should be ready. I say we should be ready to face those challenges. And then, yeah, definitely there are a lot of ways to make up ourselves. We are not born resilient, but we can build resiliency as like muscle. Going to gym. Yeah.
Great. Okay. So I think maybe that's a good way to go back to what you were saying, Shruti. I think you mentioned things that I think are very important. I mean, this spotlight effect is something that stuck with me, right? So, these are things that I would call as coping mechanisms, right? As you think about facing situations, and I broadly would call them as something that could be either problem focused or emotional focused, right? Things like accepting what is accepting the reality, reframing, if you will, uh, you know, getting into the details of it, microtasking it, and going at it, and being action oriented, social support as well. How do you get all that? And then there are other emotion aspect of it. The very aspect of denial and self blame, venting. These are some negative energies that come as you go through it. But how do you, from a methodical perspective, somebody going through this change, either personal, individual, or entrepreneur, how would somebody help them through it, right? I mean, in terms of some of these spotlight effect that you talked about, or reframing and so on. If you have some examples of how you've seen it happen, that'll be helpful for the audience as well.
Thank you, Nat. I think the spotlight effect is something that I live by, right? I think, and it has helped me a lot because it really sort of helps you take out emotions, overriding emotions from a situation or a problem that you might be in, right? And what is the spotlight effect? Firstly, I think when you make yourself bigger than, more significant than anything, essentially you say that, oh, this has been happening with me, and it's a cognitive bias, right? You overestimate yourself, you overestimate the problem, and it might and you overestimate how others are viewing you in this entire problem that you're in. I don't think people will notice a small stain on your shirt, or the fumble that you might have on a talk, or a mistake that you might have done in your entrepreneurial journey. We make it bigger than it is, and really sort of, when you sit down with that problem and you put a rationale to it, and you reframe it, right? You reinterpret it, you write it in a way that you detach yourself from that problem itself. I think it helps you see more clearly on what the problem is, and hence come into a solution mode on how you can solve the problem. Because the more you stay attached, and you don't distance yourself from the problem, you will never be able to derive to a solution. So I think it's extremely important to be able to do that. And different people, what has worked for me is journaling or writing. Like when I write, I am able to sort of distill it down to what the actual problem is, and what I'm perceiving the problem as, right? So I think that really helps. So I think many a times we all have we all live in our heads quite a bit, and we all sort of we are storytellers to ourselves as well. So we tell ourselves stories that may or may not be true. So I think it's important to be able to tell yourself the right story, to be and I think what works when you reframe a problem, and let's take something simple, right? You dashed your car into something, right? And it can when you start reframing it, you take ownership of it. in a way that you don't blame yourself for it. You say, yes, you dashed a car into a pavement. This is the situation. Now, what do you do about it? Right. So you immediately sort of, take ownership, yet not blame yourself, and come to a solution in terms of, what you have to do next. So I think it's very important to be able to see the silver lining in any situation. And for me, reframing has always worked.
Brilliant. Yeah, I think that, and I'm going to use use a term called meditation, right? Not that I'm expert in it, but some of the things that people talk about is being able to delink you as a person from your thoughts, right? Is something that they talk about when you talk about spirituality or meditation, and it's also about thinking from other person's shoes is something that we use in normal language, right? And how do you take yourself away from the person that you acted something and now think like a third party, right? I mean, being able to witness something that happened where you were one of the players and say what happened there, and what might the other person thought about how I acted, my demeanor, my tone, my assumptions that I made about the other person's intent, could be anything.
Yeah.
So really, bringing back a certain sense of calmness and rethinking what happened and saying what might be what have you taken as an assumption, and is that true? Do you have evidence to act on it, or would you think differently where there are different possibilities, right? And those are very, very important things as you deal with so resilience is this very broad umbrella term, but underlying that is a lot of these emotions that Shruti talked about, including the spotlight effect and reframing. These are some nuances that you go through. Again, I'm sure you all do it in your own way, and we're just giving terminologies to it in this conversation. But how do you become very conscious of it and don't think this large problem, strife with emotions, and taking that, or wanting to handle it all by yourself? How do you break it down into smaller things that either you act on? And I would also introduce this thing about, I'm sure many of you heard about circle of concern and circle of influence, right? And I think Krishna alluded to it also a little bit, right? What is it you can really control, right? And what is beyond your control, right? And how much of time do you spend or feeding that sphere, which is a circle of concern, but you can't do much about it, right? And that's again extremely important way to put it in writing, as she said, being very, very in front of your eyes in a tangible way. These are things that bother me, but do I have control? I mean, do I have control over weather? Do I have control of interest rates that banks charge me for a debt that I want to take up for working capital? And these are people that work for me. They need to do certain tasks. What's the circle of influence that I have? I think those are very powerful things that are important as well, right? Going beyond this emotion of stress on me, things that I don't like, and how do you put it in tangible terms and act on things that you want to act on, right? So I'd love for you to comment on it, Krishna, and then Shruti, on this whole idea of what you can control and things beyond your control. Krishna, you want to take that first? You're muted.
I would like to, can you help me to understand the question first of all? What can be controlled?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, things you actually mentioned in your conversation as well, right? There are certain things that happen to you, the tough situations that you are facing, right? And so there are certain things that are beyond your control. These are, in any example, like you said, in the incident that happened, it's not possible to bring your dad back. But then there are things that you can do to deal with it and move on, your response to that stress, right? So talk about what you control and what you can't control, and how do you use that?
Okay, real life situation itself, I can mention one more, like whatever I told. So when I met with accident, doctors told 1 year bed rest. Okay, which I mean, the leg broken is broken. That's it. I can't attach it, right? So I can't walk immediately. So which I need to accept it, and then which is not in my control also. Okay. The second challenge which we faced immediately at the same time, where we are completely debt ridden actually. I mean to say we're completely into debts. Our company is into debts. We have to pay merchant payments, salaries, all this blah blah blah. Majority of the times we face these financial pressures in as a social entrepreneur or normal any entrepreneur, right? So at that time, which is in my control is only one thing. What can I do in terms of finances? Second is in terms of my leg situation, I can't do anything. I should be on the bed only. So which I left it completely. Even in the ICU also, the nurses and everybody was telling, why are you so excited about the situation, whatever it happened to you? Then I told them that, okay, whatever it happened, happened. I can't do anything. I'm talking over the phone to a lot of people, all the merchants and everybody, telling them, explaining them all these things, and then when we can do, what we can do, all these things and all. So at least I have drilled down all those things who are priority, which are priority tasks right now, which are not priority. All those things I have written down on the ICU itself. And then I started calling people, telling them that what to do, what not to do. Like even to our team also, how to behave in that situation. Like within 3 months, we were able to control it and bring it back to normal actually. And of course, with the help of NSRCL also, in January 1st, we have that situation. By March, we controlled and we brought it back in terms of finances and other things by bouncing back to normal situation. But my health condition is same only. I mean to say it got better, but the company situation got transformed actually, which we controlled it.
Got it. Thank you. Thanks for sharing that, Krishna. So, Shruti, coming back to you, I think you deal with very, very challenging, challenges generally. I mean, social entrepreneurs, change makers who take on extremely complex challenges facing the society, right? I mean, that's why you choose them, Ashoka change makers. So, share a few thoughts, perspectives as to what have you seen to be successful traits of these change makers, right? From a resilience standpoint, being able to lead with a vision, deal with setbacks, anything that you think would be important for the social entrepreneurs in the audience today?
when I used to go to school with, while not finishing assignments on time, perhaps sometime, or some other situations that I would take to the teacher. So I think it's very important for us to remember that you can only control the controllables, right? And when what we see with a lot of our social entrepreneurs, right, when they go out to generate support, in terms of building your team, how do you build partnerships? How do you raise funding? How do you measure your impact? These are all the controllables, right? So you do it in the best possible way. But there are situations like COVID, right, which is an uncontrollable, right? And then I like to call this learned helplessness, where you know that you're helpless, but you're also aware of that helplessness, right? And these uncontrollables have debilitating outcomes. They have fear attached to it. They have all of these things follow an uncontrollable adverse event, because that event is not in your control. So I think I think it's important to be able to distinguish it and not worry about the uncontrollables, because you can only respond to it, right? And we've seen a lot of our entrepreneurs and change makers respond to COVID, and not try to control it, because you can't control the outcome of it. And I think you have to get through the uncontrollables. You have to, or even the controllables for that matter, you have to build a community. You have to create teams that are driven with the same purpose. You have to practice creating, being able to work with a team of teams approach. How do you sort of work with different communities, different stakeholders, different teams? And how do you work towards a shared goal as a team? I think these are things that keep you going no matter what the situations are. So I think building a culture where everyone is a problem solver, everyone wants to contribute, everyone wants to actively give within your own teams usually helps you navigate difficult situations. And I think having really clarity on purpose, and being really attached to your mission, right, as your impact mission as an organization, it's something that I've seen that has really helped social entrepreneurs and change makers to keep at it, no matter what the situations are.
Great, thank you. And maybe we we probably have another 15 minutes or so, and I think we talked about different aspects of resilience in individuals, what they face and how could they cope with it, and so on. And I want to spend another 10-15 minutes about the resilient organizations as well. I mean, talk a little bit about entrepreneurs particularly, or the organization also. So we'll cover that. Before that, I got a message about one question that came from somebody, right? So there's a question, and I'd love for both of you to take a stab at it briefly. The question is, does resilience mean being strong all the time? Right, and this is something we hear, quite often. So I'd love for you both to respond, and I'll chime in as well in the end. So, Shruti, you want to start?
No, I don't think resilience means being strong all the time. I think resilience means being human, being bogged down by the problems that are at you, but finding a way out of it. I think that's what resilience means. You cannot be strong. I mean, it's just not possible. You cannot be strong all the time, right? We have difficult life situations that are thrown at us. We're all in this journey of life to learn and get better and at solving our problems. And like I was saying before, right? I think it is a skill, and you get more and more resilient as you go along with time. And I think it's also important. I want to also talk a little bit about. We talk about resilience at a very individual level and just for ourselves, but I think what's very important is also keeping empathy at the center of it, also understanding what other people's problems are. And by empathy, I just don't mean feeling the other person's problem, but cognitive empathy, right? How do you develop solutions or help people who are facing problems around you? So, and that comes in very handy with teams, with relationships, with family, with friends. So I think we also have to at some point go beyond talking about resilience just for ourselves, but also for the communities that we belong to, for the units that we belong to. So it's important to expand that horizon a bit from the individual aspect.
Great. Krishna, you want to add anything to it?
Yeah, I mean, a small thing which I want to add. So resilience, how strong, instead of like every time need not be strong. Definitely, as Shruti mentioned, like we become weak sometimes, but how soon we can get back. That's what is resilience, in my opinion. And also further, definitely there are certain ways, whereas I believe most of the times, like whenever we get any challenge or we become weak, gratitude is the biggest one which worked for me better. Like I believe, like, is this the end of my life? No, right? Obviously, then there will be some possibilities. Obviously, then list out the possibilities. Then second is like reading the books. Obviously, then I was reading a book called Courage to be Disliked recently, and then they had mentioned two lines of this thing which impressed me a lot. When you touch water from the borewell in the winter, it gives you hotness. I mean, little bit warm it will be. When you touch the water in summer, it will be little cool. But it is like with the environment or situation, it is not changing. The water heat is same in terms of degrees and other things. When you measure it at the ground level, it is same only. But when we are touching it, our feeling is different. That's it. Like the way we perceive the things in different manner. Like if you change your perspective, even if you are weak that time, if you change your perspective, then you can be, I mean, obviously you can be resilient. Obviously, like you can deal with the challenge in a better manner.
Wonderful. I completely agree with both of you. I mean, I don't think resilient is being strong all the time at all. I think both of them very beautifully articulated it. It is really about taking care of yourself and taking care of your well-being and getting back for the fight again, right? It's not about, and we all have been, at least I've been misled in the past to believe, as head of the family, be it a father or a mother, you need to be strong, put on a brave face. Or if you're CEO of a company, you believe everything is hunky-dory, there is no financial crunch, you don't want to take people and upset them and so on, right? I mean, some of these are, different schools of thought, but I think, it is about giving yourself the best chance to, be yourself, have trust in the people that you're with, be it family, friends, colleagues, and giving your idea the best chance to succeed, even though they might be temporary setbacks, right? And that means accepting small failures, accepting pivots, accepting not just to pursue different direction from any and whatever quarters. I think it's about all of that. It is not about winning all the battles and being right all the time or any of that. It is about also being vulnerable when you're feeling that, and getting the right help. And I think it's all of those things. So I don't think it's far from being strong all the time. So a kind of longer way of saying what Shruti and Krishna said, but completely endorse that. Okay, so why don't we get back to the resilient organizations, right? And what does that mean? And I mean, that could mean a few things. One is for the leader at the top. It could be also about the company's idea of a product or a service, how they manage in the market that they are in, competitors and all that. What does resilience mean in that context? Krishna, you want to start first, and then Shruti?
As I mentioned, like it's not only about getting back from, how soon you get back from the setback. It's not only about that. It's about like how much are you ready to face challenges before it comes also. Like suppose, for example, like in our company also, till last before 2 months also still we were assuming ourselves that we are strong actually, but last 2 months back when we did some kind of surveys within our team itself, all these things and all, we don't have a proper process in couple of places. So, handling as Shruti mentioned previously, like in one of the things, organizations with delegations actually, like distributing your work and other things. It's not that one person will be doing all the work every time, and then whenever some challenge comes in, then the whole work will be disturbed completely. So instead of that, if the process is set better in any of the company or the culture, if we set the culture in a proper manner, that supporting culture and other things within the team also as an organization, definitely any kind of challenge we can if we get any challenge, we can get back sooner, much sooner than what it will be actually. That's what I believe.
Got it. Thank you. Shruti, you want to take a stab at it? I mean, what does it mean for organization in terms of, it could be next level leaders, it could be for products and services, your theory of change, it could be any of those things. Would be great to get your perspective.
Yeah, thanks, Nat. I think to me, a resilient organization is one, and I'll go back to the controllable and the uncontrollables, right? I think an organization that's able to sort of anticipate the problems or the situations that might arise, and be prepared for that, and also have a team or have the ability to navigate the uncontrollables as well, right? And I think the core of that becomes the team then, right? And I think it becomes very important, especially when I think of a social impact organization, right? To remind the core reason of existence of the organization, and sharing that with the team on a continuous basis, and connecting with people and sharing that belief becomes, and that purpose becomes extremely important, right? So having a meaningful and clear purpose, which provides a sense of direction into how not just you, but how team members can communicate and act, becomes extremely important for a resilient organization. And when the team's purpose is clear, and we're all inspired towards the mission, it sort of helps and empowers you to make informed decisions under tough times. And if you are not sort of, if you don't stand by the purpose, then it is important that you work with them to clarify, to motivate them. And hence, to do that, what becomes even more important is effective communication within teams, right? And I think we often talk about communication in the passing, and we talk about how important it is, but I think to put it to practice is it's just so important to build a resilient and a successful organization that works towards a mission, right? And again, I'll go back to empathy, putting that as a premise to be able to communicate effectively with teams, your customers, so that everyone feels heard and valued, setting clear expectations, being intentional about the expectations and the team norms, and what you're trying to do, it becomes even more important. Your donkey story, right, I think reminds me of how important storytelling is. And stories are powerful. When you tell a good story, you give life to a vision, a goal, or an objective. So I think using that as a technique to build a resilient organization is very powerful. And I think what is important for leaders is to follow up with action, right? And I think oftentimes we talk all the right things, but it becomes but skilled leaders I've seen that know that communication has to go beyond words, right? You have to sort of back up with trusted behavior and actions to communicate a world of information. So it's important to align. I think just one quick last thing I feel that, and I touched upon it very briefly, is bringing in everyone a problem solver approach within your team is extremely important to build a resilient organization. Helping employees come up with problem solving strategies that that don't sort of let them look at a leader every time there is a problem that arises, but they are able to sort of solve problems just as puzzles that can be dealt with, and helping them build that skill. I think it's extremely powerful, and the teams may be struggling with sort of different aspects, but if they're able to develop an attitude that they are in control of the situation and they take full ownership of it, I think it really sort of sets your organization a class apart.
Excellent. So my 2 cents on that, and then we'll try and do one round of wrapping up and then take up questions. So I think we talked about the individual or personal resilience first. All of us talked about it, and Krishna and now Shruti talked about the organizational resilience as well. And I think as social entrepreneurs or entrepreneurs in general, and I'm assuming most of you are still in the very early stages of it, I think it's you can't think about it early enough, right? I mean, as you think about it, you need thought partners, right? You need thought partners to validate your idea. And those, some of them could be mentors, some of them could be some of your cohort members. If some of you went through NSR Cell cohorts, you have a wonderful system where your cohorts that you can share your stories with, and what are some of their experiences, what are some of the challenges, and how are they coping with that, right? And thinking about it through them as well. I mean, they can relate to you, but they're still distanced from your product idea and your service idea. Where do you draw the line between two emotionally connected to your idea of change versus doing what is right by your vision and goals in the larger societal change you're trying to make? I think those are things that one needs to decipher, and preferably when you have a sounding board as well, in the coach, mentor, another friend, somebody who listens to you. And a lot of times the answers are resident in you. You know the answer. You just need a way of talking it out with somebody and saying, what do you really think about it? I think the example that we talked about, externalizing it and taking witnessing some of your own views and emotions, and if you had to redo it again, how will you do it? I think those kinds of role playing is very, very effective. So I think companies need to go through it as well, in terms of getting the right people in your organization, setting the right culture, for them to, think and act in the best interest of what you're trying to do, even when you're not there dictating the decision, if you will, right? So building that kind of resiliency in terms of bench strength, leadership is extremely important. And also, in this space, particularly social entrepreneurship, it's going to be very difficult, right? I mean, you're still trying to get a product market fit, get a paying customer, get some policy changes done that favors you in terms of doing a business. And some of it don't come in so easily, right? So how do you survive, and how do you do the things that need to be done to survive another day, right? Taking one step at a time, decluttering some of those decisions, executing the micro tasks, and feeling the small wins to cheer you up, and also the team as well, right? So those are some of the things that you would do. And then making the change when you think the writing is on the wall. When people tell you, hey, you seem to be too wedded with this idea of your product and your service, but what the market is doing or what the policy is demanding is something different. How do you react to it, accept a small setback and rethink your product, come up with a better way of dealing with a problem. I think those are the things that is a hallmark of a resilient leader in an organization as well. And I'll end with this one story that stuck with me for a long time. Back in my business school days, there was if I remember right, it's Johnson and Johnson. So they came for a recruitment, and and they're amazing storytellers. And this whole case study about this medicine called Tylenol. I don't know how many of you have heard of the story, but Tylenol is one of those very powerful fever reducer, pain reducer type medicine, extremely popular, back in the day, still does. But there was a point in time when certain store had some kind of contamination. The Tylenol bottles were contaminated with some other chemical, and it had some very, very bad side effects. I don't know how many people died and so on. So the CEO had a very, very difficult call to make, right? I mean, this was a extremely positive product, cash cow for them, help be the market leader. But this person had to make a decision. Am I going to, somehow, weather the tide and wait for it to do it, or am I going to do the right thing and pull the product of the market? So and he went back and took the market out. It was extremely popular, profitable product. And it was not his fault or not the company's fault. It was truly some kind of a rogue intervention that contaminated a few products in one store. But he took the decision to recall the entire product line because that's how he felt about who his customers are and what their well-being is, right? And to me, again, I'm not saying each of you will be cast with similar decisions early in your entrepreneurial career, but it's important to think about what is the right thing and how do you think of it from a resilient frame as well. It is about establishing credibility back with your stakeholders. That could be friends, family, well-wishers, mentors, investors, and showing that you're willing to make the difficult call. You're willing to accept that this was a problem and then do the right thing. And then they obviously built a fantastic business after that. I mean, people love them more for acknowledging with humility that there was a small problem and all that. So to me, it's about all of these things, right? So I'm going to quickly sum up. So there is an individuality to it. It is about, I think, again, back to my first caveat, it's not a prescription. You will all have your own way of dealing with it. But I think being a very balanced individual, right? Work is work. Slog it out if you need to, 12, 14, 15 hours, whatever it is, but certainly have something beyond work as well, right? As you think about your own personality, you should not be defined by just the work that you do. The relationship with family and friends are extremely important. If you have other interests, hobbies, reading, biking, whatever that you do, let that be a good part of it. I think that will make you more effective in terms of dealing with your core purpose in life. It'll help you be resilient as well. One, it will strengthen your roots, if you will, right? This is what you go back to, and this is why you do all the other things that you do on your day job. So I think that's a very powerful way of thinking about resiliency. How do you build resiliency in the system? So I think if you can get that right, and if you have a good social connect where friends, family stand by you and support you, I think to me, that's a necessary condition to be resilient, I think, right? That's my personal feeling. So with that, parting thoughts, Shruti and Krishna, and then we'll open up for questions.
I think you have summed it up very well, Nat. I think resilience is such a, as much as we talk about it, and it's such a personal thing, right? How I build my resilience will be very different from how someone else does. But I think what's important is to, and this is something again that we've seen at Ashoka when we deal with a lot of social entrepreneurs and change makers, right? We look at their entrepreneurial journeys very carefully. We try and understand what has shaped them as individuals and what was the first time they entrepreneured something and tried to bring in change in the communities. And one thing that has sort of been in our face is that what social entrepreneurs do is give themselves the permission to do what they want to do, to bring the change that they want to bring, right? And I think if you can do that day in and day out, and keep giving yourself permission to keep coming back to the problem that you want to solve, I think resilience is a byproduct of that, I feel, and it will happen. So yeah, I'll just stop at that.
Krishna, anything you want to add to that?
I think You summed it up well, and Shruti already shared a lot of things actually. So, which is like I believe even like whenever we feel low or anything in terms of like while handling the challenges also, especially for social impact entrepreneurs, what is the impact they created till now, and what is the impact that they are planning to create in future. So if they can, if they remind those two things actually, and they can feel happy about it, what they are doing, and obviously, as Shruti told, it's a resilience is byproduct actually. So automatically it comes actually, it develops automatically. So remaining things we do it automatically.
Great, thank you. And I think there's one question that's been shared, and if one of you want to take it up, not necessarily completely resilient focused, but there is that angle as well. I think the question is, can you talk about the talent attraction, right? And how do you onboard employees? Do you particularly have a view into it? Do you want to talk about it? Any of you, go ahead.
I think as I was sharing, and I sort of briefly touched upon this, is that at Ashoka we deal with a lot of social entrepreneurs and change makers, right? And what is very important for us, both at the staff, the social entrepreneurs, or our young change makers, right, is the entrepreneurial track record of an individual. We try and understand what has shaped an individual. When was the first time they entrepreneured something? How did they, spot the idea, build a team around it, and created an impact? How did their growing up professional experience look like? What did they change in their schools, college, or community? So I think these are some important questions that we ask, because it's very important for us in terms of how entrepreneurial they have been and how much they have contributed to solving problems. We also try to keep the process away from biases by having multiple viewpoints. So our selection process, across fellows, young change makers, or even staff, goes through multiple rounds of people from different geographies and different countries and different levels, sort of speaking to individuals. So I think we have put in these very sort of powerful processes in place, in terms of, because for us it's very important who comes on board, and continues to remain sort of vision aligned, which is everyone a change maker, right? And I think that selection becomes very high priority, and we take it very seriously.
Okay, and I can add to that. And this is again a it depends question. Putting my consulting hat on, it really depends on the kind of organization that you are building, what stage you are in, and all of that, right? So talent is a strategy. You need to be very deliberate about the talent that you bring on, and I think there are certain things that are common, no matter what it is, which is, back to, does that person have the right integrity? Talking about resilience and certain, skills that you would need no matter what, right? Does a person invest in understanding what the goals are, what the product vision is, who the customers and market are, so that they can then internalize it and start doing actions that are aligned with the founder's vision, the way you see the problem or the opportunity and how you want the solution to be developed, right? So I think it's important that you have this person who's intuitive and has a good understanding of the customer, the opportunity out there, and then the solutions can be many, right? I mean, the adage or the cliche is, you hire for attitude, skill can be learned, right? And I think that is something that I truly believe is the case. I think the skills do keep changing, and technologies change and all of that. So I think if you can get access to somebody who's rational, who thinks about customers and aligned with why you started the company and the ideas, I think that's a great start. And I think in terms of how you onboard them, to me, building trust is extremely important. I think this is, again, as a social entrepreneur, I have seen enough of them hold things very close to their chest as well. I think it's important to be transparent as to what your journey is, what your change thesis is. Information asymmetry is not an asset, right? I mean, it's important that you share things with the team as openly as possible and equip them to do better, right? You eventually want them to be better than you in some ways, right? That way, you as a company can grow much more, kind of beyond your imagination, what you thought is possible. So I think, to me, if you can share that and trust them and be open to their ideas and thinking best ideas come from anywhere, I think that would be a good starting point in terms of hiring and onboarding good employees. Okay. All right. So I know we have another 10 minutes or so. How do you want to do this, Chitran? Any more questions? Should people open up and ask, or do you want to highlight some questions for us?
Yeah, so there is, yeah, Sam, do you want to go ahead?
Yeah, I see there are two hands raised. We can either address the two questions that are already in the Q&A section. Okay, I think there are a couple of more questions coming in as well. There was one about the present situation in Manipur and essentially having factors that are out of your control and how you can sort of just stay inspired or afloat during tough times. I know a lot of the answers sort of answered or like touched upon this theme, but if there's anything else that either Shruti, Krishna, or Nat would want to, bring out, we could address that as well.
Okay, I'm looking through it. Shruti, Krishna, if you've read the question, go ahead and feel free to respond. Okay. Shruti, you want to?
I see a few questions here. I think one of them is the top 3 social impact ventures and founders. I don't know if that has sort of come in now, or and I see another question which says, what is the one thing that has always kept you motivated in today's entrepreneurship environment?
Yeah, go for it. Whichever you think you want to take up.
Yeah, I think this is a difficult one in terms of the top 3 social impact ventures and founders, right? Because there are so many. But I'll try and name 3 of them. So one of them is Chetna Gala Sinha, who started Mandeshi, right? And I think what she really did through her work is give a lot of agency to rural women, and took financial independence and literacy really to the grassroots. I think it's really powerful work, and we must I would recommend that the audience sort of looks her work up. I think Wendy Kopp, who started Teach for All, is another one that has, I believe, has created a really powerful impact across countries with the different chapters. Right, this is Teach for All, which has which has Teach for India, Teach for America, a lot of other chapters across countries, right? And it has really sort of revolutionized the education space and connected the higher education and young people who want to contribute with the lack of teachers in schools. So I think there is that's a very powerful sort of work again, and I think there is another young change maker that we have, and his name is Akash. And the work that he does in terms of creating livelihood opportunities for prisoners in the north of India, right? And at the same time, taking temple waste and helping them create different artifacts and gift items. So sort of bridging the environment and the livelihoods piece. And I think it's a really powerful work that he started at the age of 19. So, I think there are many stories of change that we see every day, and particularly in my work with young people that continue to inspire me. So I think I will stick with these 3 just for the lack of time.
Krishna, you want to add to that?
Yeah, actually, the social impact startups, if you look at it, like I believe, I mean, I don't know, Joho, it's like a profitable, generally, normally, how do you consider it? But one of my inspiring companies are Joho, Mr. Sridhar Vembu, actually. So, who created office itself, the entire head office itself in villages, and then is creating enough employment opportunities in rural India. So, that's one of the things, actually. And I don't know, I mean, remaining two, I can't say right away, but definitely that is one of the things. And also day to day, what is that, that always kept you motivational in today's entrepreneurship environment? Definitely, see, one is to keep up that day to day. One is reading books. Obviously, every time, always people used to say reading books, but it's like still I also say that reading books only. So most of the times, because it keeps you up actually always. So that is one thing, and second thing is gratitude, as I mentioned already. Instead of worrying about what you don't have, be gratitude to what you are having. So at least you are alive today, which is the most happiest thing and which you can celebrate more than a birthday, right? So these are the things which will keep up and motivate us, and at the same time, the last but not least, like which is our purpose, what we are building, for what we are building. So these are the two things which will motivate always every day. I mean, while we are waking up, and the whole day it keeps up the energy and it motivates us. So these are the things I wanted to add, Matt.
Yeah. So I think quickly my take on it is, there are some amazingly inspiring ideas from, Eunice onwards to several others who've done. But I think my response is I get inspired by you all. I mean, to see some very young people fresh out of college to come and want to change the world. That to me is inspiring, right? I mean, some of us took the easy way out, work for large companies, let them take the risk, and we learned along the way. But to see some of you take on some of the most wicked issues grappling the society and wanting to see that resolved just gives me a lot of hope, admiration, respect, all of it, right? I mean, and I also am not naive enough to think each one of it will succeed, and that's besides the point. But to put your time and effort into it, to take a honest and sincere attempt to solve the problem, and giving yourself the most chance to succeed, working with your peer groups, helping each other, connecting. And I would think that to me is a lot more inspiring than anything else. Okay. Okay, there is another question. Uh, uh, is there a connect between emotional intelligence and resilience? Interesting question. You want to take it up?
Yeah.
I think there is. Go ahead, Krishna.
No problem. I can carry on.
No,
No, go ahead, Krishna. Yeah.
Go ahead, Krishna. Go ahead.
I'll add certain things. I'm not sure whether it will be relevant or not. Okay. So basically, yeah, definitely there is a connection between emotional intelligence and resilience. So because it's about how you act actually. So how much intelligent do you behave? Like just in the starting itself, Shruti mentioned you need not be too much emotionally attached to the challenge or whatever we get it, right? Like first you need to detach yourself and then you need to think away from that, right? So that is definitely, and also one small example I will tell you. One small challenge, you take it. You are going on a road at full speed actually, and somebody came crossing the road, which even without signal also they are crossing the road, and then suddenly you little bit touch them, and if you immediately react, there is a challenge actually which happened already. If you immediately react to them that, hey pagal, are you going on the road in the right way or not, all these things and all, this is one way to act it. And second way is like stop the bike or whatever the vehicle and ask them, is it everything okay, are you okay right now? Then immediately he will say sorry for you. Instead of creating the problem bigger, you used your emotional intelligence over there, and then you touched you touched him, and then you asked him, you're concerned about him. So that's where the shift will change. It will turn into positive shift. Suddenly that environment which will go heat into, that it will become normal actually. So this one thing which recently shared by our mentor, this is one of the example which I thought I can share it here.
Good. Okay. Shruti, anything to add for you?
Yeah, no, I was going to say that there is an absolute connect between emotional intelligence and resilience, right? I feel that emotional intelligence is the bridge between resilience and personal growth, right? And why do I say that? Because I think emotional intelligence sort of allows you to understand not just your emotions in isolation, but also in the of others around you, right? So it is important to be able to know the aspirations of people around you, know the emotions that have the ability to know the emotions of the where you're operating, the communities, the teams, the partners, the funders that you're working with. All of that requires emotional intelligence, and that's your path to resilience, right? And I feel that without emotional intelligence, it's really I would say impossible, because it allows you to look at the wholeness of any situation, wholeness of an individual, where they're coming from. So without that, I think it is really difficult to be resilient and to be able to do what you want to do.
Okay, fantastic. I mean, I agree with it. I can talk a little bit more about it, but not needed. I think they have absolutely responded to it. So I don't think there's any more questions. If there's any last questions, please do send our way. I think we are at 5. I don't like to go beyond it and hold you all there, but it's been a very interesting session. So I want to thank you all for joining in the afternoon, and hopefully you took away some interesting tidbits that you will apply in your own way and benefit from it. But Shruti and Krishna, thanks again. Fantastic experience and perspectives that you shared to make this a very relevant thing for some of our social entrepreneurs. So thank you for taking the time to join and making it a relevant session. Thank you. And thanks,
Thank you so much.
Sitwan and Samita. Over to you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Nat, Shruti, and Krishna, for taking the lead on the session. We saw wonderful questions and comments really praising, a lot of what was discussed in the session and talking about how they found it really relevant. This is why we do webinars. It's a chance for us to engage with entrepreneurs out there who don't necessarily get to interact with NSR Cell and their mentors and the network through sessions and things like that. So yeah, we find these webinars, so relevant just because of the kind of topics they really break down for founders in the ecosystem. And on that note, again, thank you so much, Nat. Thank you, Krishna. Thank you, Shruti, and also to the Ashoka team for collaborating with us. We're looking forward to more such collaborations in the future, and we're really excited to partner with you all. Thank you all, and all the attendees who dialed in. We hope this was a really insightful session, and we hope you join us for future sessions as well. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, everyone.
So much, Nat. Thank you.
Good.
Thank you so much,
Suzy.
everyone.
Thank you, Samita.
Bye.
Thank you so much for the opportunity.
Bye. Thank you.